Welcome to Crossdressing Stories. Here, we share personal stories, celebrate self-expression. If you're on your own journey or simply curious, you've found your community. Subscribe and join the conversation.
The world used to be simple. It was made of three things: the packed dirt of the track, the burn in my lungs, and the roar of the crowd as I broke the tape. My name is Jack Lind, and just a few months ago, I was the king of that world, 17 years old, a junior at Northgate High, and the fastest miler the state had ever seen. I can still feel it if I close my eyes. The final lap, my legs, pistons of pure muscle, devoured the track. My heart hammered against my ribs, a drumbeat counting down to glory. The final 100 yards were a blur of screaming faces and outstretched hands. I remember Sue Wendell, my girlfriend, her blonde ponytail a golden slash in the stands, her voice cutting through the noise. And then, the finish line. I didn't just cross it, I exploded through it. The clock flashed 3:59:8. I had done it, I had broken the 4-minute mile. The aftermath was a dream. Reporters shoved microphones in my face. My coach, Mr. Davison, slapped my back so hard I nearly stumbled. My friends hoisted me onto their shoulders, chanting my name. But the best moment, the one I replayed in my head for weeks, was when they set me down and Sue launched herself into my arms. Her face was flushed with pride, her eyes shining. "You did it, Jack," she breathed, her lips finding mine. "My 4-minute man." In that moment, I was invincible. My future was a straight, clear track leading directly to a full athletic scholarship, the Olympics, and a life with Sue. I was Jack Lind, the runner. It was more than what I did, it was who I was. My identity was carved into the sinew and muscle of my body, a body I had spent years honing into a perfect machine. But even perfect machines can break down. The first sign was subtle. It was a week after the big race. During a light training run, I felt a drag in my legs, a leaden weariness that had no business being there. I chalked it up to post-race fatigue. Just need to rest up, I told myself, jogging back to the locker room. A week later, it was worse. My usual 5-mile warm-up felt like a marathon. The power in my quads felt diluted. I looked down at my legs, the familiar hard ridges of muscle seeming softer, less defined. I shook my head, dismissing it. It was just stress. The pressure of being the new golden boy was getting to me. My mom noticed before I was willing to admit it. "You look pale, Jack," she said one evening at dinner, her brow furrowed with concern. "And you're not eating as much. Is everything okay at school?" "I'm fine, Mom," I grumbled, pushing mashed potatoes around my plate. "Just tired. Coach is working us hard." It was a lie. Coach Davison had actually told me to take it easy, worried I was burning out. The truth was, I couldn't push myself even if I wanted to. The strength just wasn't there. My personal best in the weight room started to slide backward. My voice, which had always been a solid baritone, seemed to crack more easily, sometimes pitching higher in a way that made my friends snicker. "Puberty hitting you late," Lind, my teammate Andy Marks, joked, punching my arm. I forced a laugh, but a cold knot of dread tightened in my stomach. The most unnerving changes were happening in private. In front of my bedroom mirror, my chest, usually a hard plate of pectoral muscle, was looking puffy. My hips seemed to have a slight curve they never had before. My skin, usually weathered from hours on the track, felt softer, smoother. One Saturday morning, I pulled on a new compression shirt, one of those tight, moisture-wicking ones designed for athletes. It clung to my torso like a second skin. As I looked in the mirror, my breath caught in my throat. The fabric stretched taut across my chest, clearly outlining two small, distinct mounds. They weren't pecs. They were something else. I stared, my heart pounding a frantic, terrified rhythm. I touched one of them through the thin fabric. It was sensitive, yielding, a wave of shame and confusion so intense it made me dizzy, washed over me. I ripped the shirt off, my skin stinging from the friction. I threw it into the back of my closet as if it were radioactive. I stood there, bare-chested, panting. I looked at my reflection. Who was this person looking back at me? His shoulders seemed narrower, his waist a little more defined. The face was mine, but the eyes were filled with a fear I'd never known. The confident, invincible runner was gone, replaced by a stranger. "It's just stress," I whispered to my reflection, the words sounding hollow and unconvincing. "You're just tired." But I knew, deep down, that it was more than that. Something was fundamentally wrong. The simple world of the track, the burn, and the roar was dissolving around me, and I was terrified of what would be left when it was all gone. Sue started to notice, too. We were sitting in my car after a movie, the dashboard lights casting soft shadows on her face. She reached over and ran her hand up my arm. "Your muscles feel different," she said, her voice quiet. It wasn't an accusation, just an observation. "Are you still lifting?" "Of course I am," I said, a little too defensively. I pulled my arm away. "It's nothing." She looked at me, her blue eyes searching my face. "You seem different, Jack, distant. Is it me?" No, of course not," I said, my voice softening. I hated the worry in her eyes, hated that I was the one who put it there. "I'm just under a lot of pressure. The state finals are coming up." She accepted the excuse, but I could see the doubt lingering. She leaned in to kiss me, and for a moment, everything felt normal. But as I held her, I was acutely aware of the softness of my own body, the way it felt less like the solid rock she was used to clinging to. I felt like a fraud. I was Jack Lind, the 4-minute man. But I was living in a body that was betraying me, one cell at a time. The finish line I was racing toward now wasn't one of victory, but of some terrible, unknown transformation, and I was running out of time. The breaking point came during a qualifying meet a month after my record-breaking run. It was a simple mile, a race I should have won in my sleep. But on the third lap, my legs turned to cement, my vision tunneled, and the familiar burn in my lungs became a suffocating fire. I stumbled, my stride breaking. Runners I used to lap with ease streamed past me. Andy Marks shot me a look of pity as he surged ahead. I finished second to last, collapsing onto the infield grass, gasping for air that wouldn't come. Coach Davison knelt beside me, his face a mask of confusion and concern. "Jack, what the hell was that?" I couldn't answer. All I could do was lie there, the shame heavier than any physical exhaustion. The whispers from the stands were like daggers. What happened to Lind? Guess he was a one-hit wonder. That night, my mom took one look at my ashen face and made an appointment with our family doctor for the next morning. I didn't protest. The denial had finally crumbled, leaving only raw fear in its place. Dr. Miller's office was sterile and smelled of antiseptic. He had been my doctor since I was 5. Had treated every sprain and flu. He listened patiently as my mom described my symptoms, the fatigue, the muscle loss, the mood swings. I sat there silently, staring at my hands, feeling like a specimen under a microscope. After a physical exam where I felt a burning humiliation as he palpated my tender chest, he ordered a battery of blood tests. "It's likely a severe hormonal imbalance, probably brought on by overexertion," he said, trying to sound reassuring. "We'll get to the bottom of it." The call came 2 days later. My mom answered. I watched as the color drained from her face. She held the phone away from her ear, her hand trembling. "A specialist? Yes, of course. We'll be there this afternoon." She hung up and looked at me, her eyes wide with a terror that mirrored my own. "He wants us to see a specialist at the university hospital, an endocrinologist, Dr. Evans." The drive to the city was silent and heavy. The specialist's office was in a newer, colder wing of the hospital. Dr. Evans was a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She had my test results spread out on her desk. She didn't waste time with small talk. "Jack," she began, her voice calm and clinical, "your blood work shows some highly unusual markers. Your testosterone levels have fallen to near zero, while your estrogen levels are, well, they're at the level of an adolescent female." I stared at her, the words not making sense. Estrogen. "We see this very rarely," she continued, folding her hands on the desk. "It's a condition we're only just beginning to understand. It's called gender biomorphism, GB for short." "Gender what?" my mom whispered. It's a rare genetic syndrome, Dr. Evans explained, her gaze fixed on me. For reasons we don't fully comprehend, a latent gene activates, usually during late adolescence. This gene triggers a cascading hormonal failure, essentially instructing the body to reconfigure itself along female lines. My mind was reeling. Reconfigure. What does that mean? I finally managed to ask, my voice a strangled croak. Dr. Evans took a deep breath. It means, Jack, that your body is in the process of changing. It's a rapid, total transformation. Within a matter of days, maybe a week or two at most, your male physiology will be completely replaced. You will be, for all intents and purposes, physically female. The room went silent. The only sound was the frantic, trapped bird flutter of my own heart. It felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. Female, the word echoed in the silent space, monstrous and absurd. No, I said, shaking my head. No, that's impossible. There has to be a mistake, a cure, something you can do. Dr. Evans's expression was one of profound sympathy, but her words were merciless. I'm so sorry, Jack. It's not a disease we can cure. It's a genetic process. Once it starts, it's irreversible. My dreams didn't just shatter. They were annihilated. The Olympics, my scholarship, my life as a runner, all gone. Sue, my relationship with Sue. How could I be her 4-minute man when I wasn't going to be a man at all? A wave of nausea rolled through me, and I thought I was going to be sick right there in the pristine office. The news spread through school like a virus. I don't know how. Maybe my mom confided in another parent. Maybe someone overheard something. All I know is that one day, I walked down the hall and the whispers followed me like a cloud of insects. People stared. Friends I'd known my whole life suddenly couldn't meet my eyes. The worst came in the locker room. I was changing out of my gym clothes, trying to be invisible, when Andy Marks cornered me. Hey, Jackie, he said, his voice a cruel, high-pitched imitation of a girl's. Heard you're going through some changes. A few other guys snickered. I felt my face flush a hot, burning red. Shut up, Andy. Ooh, she's feisty, he taunted. Don't get your panties in a twist. I clenched my fists, a surge of the old, aggressive Jack rising up, but it felt weak, impotent. I wasn't the strong, intimidating athlete anymore. I was just a freak. I grabbed my bag and pushed past him, fleeing the locker room with their laughter echoing behind me. That was the last day I went to Northgate High. My parents, guided by Dr. Evans, made a decision. There was a place for people like me, a special school. It's called the Gender Reorientation School. My dad explained, his face grim. He couldn't look at me. GRS, they help kids through the transition, teach them what they need to know. Then teach me what? I spat, my voice filled with venom. Teach me how to be a girl. I'm not a girl. Jack, please, my mom begged, tears streaming down her face. There's no other choice. You can't stay here. This is the only way to protect you. Protect me? It felt like a prison sentence. 2 days later, we drove up a long, winding driveway to a sprawling brick building that looked more like a private college than a high school. A sign at the entrance read Gender Reorientation School, embracing a new future. It felt like a mockery. I was met by a woman named Ms. Albright, the headmistress. She had a kind but firm smile that didn't reach her eyes. She led me to a small private room. On the bed was a neatly folded pile of clothes. This is the school uniform, dear, she said. You'll change into this now. It's best to start acclimating as soon as possible. I stared at the clothes, a crisp white blouse with delicate puff sleeves, a navy blue pleated skirt, a pair of white knee-high socks, and simple, black Mary Jane shoes. It was a girl's uniform. My stomach turned. I'm not wearing that, I said, my voice shaking with rage. Miss Albright's smile didn't falter. Jack, we can do this the easy way or the hard way, but either way, you will be wearing this uniform. It's the first step. I was trapped, defeated, with tears of fury and humiliation blurring my vision. I slowly began to unbutton my own shirt, the last familiar piece of my old life. In the small attached bathroom, I stood in front of the mirror. I took off my jeans and shirt, leaving me in my boxers. Then, trembling, I picked up the blouse, The soft cotton felt alien against my skin. The buttons were on the left side, the girl's side, and my fingers fumbled with them. Then came the skirt. I held it in my hands, the pleated fabric feeling both flimsy and heavy. I stepped into it, pulling it up over my hips. It settled around my waist, the hem falling just above my knees. I had never felt anything like it. The air from the vent brushed against my bare thighs, a sensation so foreign and shocking it made me gasp. The light fabric swished around my legs as I moved, a soft rustling sound that seemed to mock my masculinity. Finally, the socks and shoes, the knee-highs felt restrictive, and the simple, flat shoes made my feet look small and delicate. I looked at my reflection. It was a grotesque parody, a boy's confused, anguished face above a girl's uniform. My legs, still faintly muscled but visibly softer, looked pale and exposed below the hem of the skirt. My hands trembled at my sides. I felt a violent urge to rip it all off, to scream and break the mirror, but a small, insidious part of me, a part I hated with every fiber of my being, noted something else, the way the blouse draped over my softening shoulders, the way the skirt cinched at my waist, hinting at a curve that hadn't been there a month ago. In a horrifying, sickening way, my new body was beginning to fit these new clothes. The thought was so repulsive it made me want to vomit. This wasn't just a costume. It was a prophecy. The first few days at GRS were a blur of scheduled humiliation. I was assigned a room, a sterile, pastel pink space that felt like a sanatorium. My roommate, I was told, would be arriving in a day or two. For now, I was alone with my thoughts, which were a constant, screaming loop of "this isn't happening." The physical changes accelerated with terrifying speed. Each morning, I'd wake up and perform a desperate, panicked inventory. My body hair was thinning, disappearing from my legs and arms. The skin on my face was losing its rougher texture, becoming almost translucent. My voice was a constant source of embarrassment, cracking and sliding into a higher register without warning. But the most dramatic change was my chest. The small, puffy mounds were growing, becoming fuller, rounder, and achingly tender. It got to the point where sleeping on my stomach was impossible. I started wearing my uniform shirt loose, trying to hide the undeniable evidence of my transformation. Then came the morning it all ended. I woke up feeling different. The constant, low-grade ache of the transformation was gone. A strange sense of calm had settled over my body. I felt lighter. I pushed the blankets off and sat up, and that's when I saw it. My hair. It wasn't my short, brown crew cut anymore. It was long, cascading over my shoulders in soft, chestnut waves. I scrambled out of bed, a cry catching in my throat. My legs felt unsteady, different. I looked down. They were slender, smooth, and completely hairless, with a gentle curve to the calf and thigh that was utterly alien. My pajamas, a simple t-shirt and shorts, clung to a body I didn't recognize. My hips flared out from a narrow waist, and my chest now supported two full, perfectly formed breasts, straining against the thin cotton of the shirt. Stumbling, I made my way to the full-length mirror on the closet door. The person who stared back was a stranger, a girl. She was about my height, maybe an inch shorter. She had my brown eyes and the same straight nose, but her face was softer, heart-shaped, with higher cheekbones and fuller lips. Her skin was flawless, creamy, long. Dark lashes framed eyes that were wide with an expression of pure horror. Her body was that of a teenage girl, slender but curved, with delicate shoulders, a small waist, and the undeniable silhouette of a woman. I reached up and touched the stranger's face. In the mirror, her hand touched her own. I let out a sound, a choked guttural sob that came out as a high-pitched wail. My male anatomy, the last physical proof of who I was gone, completely replaced. I collapsed onto the floor, my new body shaking with violent, racking sobs. It was over. The fight was lost. Jacqueline was dead. His body stolen and replaced by this girl. The door opened, and Miss Albright came in, followed by a nurse. They must have been waiting for this. Miss Albright knelt beside me, her expression soft. "It's all right," she cooed, trying to put a hand on my shoulder. I flinched away. "Get away from me," I shrieked, the sound foreign and feminine to my own ears. "The worst is over now," she said calmly. "The physical change is complete. Now the real work can begin. You can start your new life." "I don't want a new life," I screamed. "I want my life back." But it was no use. They helped me to my feet, my legs feeling like jelly. The nurse gave me a mild sedative to calm my hysterics. As the drug began to fuzz the edges of my panic, Ms. Albright spoke again, her voice gentle but firm. "We find it's best to start using a new name from this point forward. It helps with the adjustment. Your parents chose one for you, Stephanie." Stephanie, the name hung in the air, alien and obscene. I didn't respond. I just let them lead me back to my bed, my mind a swirling vortex of grief and despair. The next day brought a new level of violation, the mandatory medical examination. I was taken to the school's infirmary and told to change into a thin paper gown. The humiliation of sitting on the crinkly paper of the examination table, my bare, newly female body hidden beneath the flimsy covering, was profound. The doctor, a woman with cold hands and a clinical air, performed a full physical. It included the first gynecological exam of my life. I lay there, staring at a water stain on the ceiling, trying to dissociate from what was happening. It was an experience so deeply mortifying, so fundamentally invasive, that it broke through my denial in a way nothing else had. As the doctor spoke in detached medical terms about my new anatomy, one reality became brutally, undeniably clear. I wasn't a boy in a girl's body. I had a girl's body. I was, in every physical sense of the word, a woman. The real work, as Ms. Albright called it, began in earnest. The curriculum at GRS was a crash course in femininity. We had classes on deportment, etiquette, and even vocal training to help us moderate our new voices, but the most impactful lessons were the practical ones. The following week, all the new arrivals were herded into a large, softly lit room that looked like a high-end lingerie boutique. This was our foundation garment class. Racks of bras in every size and color lined the walls, along with delicate panties and slips. I stood there, frozen, my face burning with shame. A cheerful attendant with a measuring tape around her neck approached me. "All right, Stephanie, let's get you fitted," she said, as if she were offering me a cupcake. Before I could protest, she was behind me, her hands expertly running the tape measure around my ribcage and across the fullest part of my bust. 34C, she announced brightly. "A very lovely starting point. Let's find you something comfortable." She returned with several bras. One was a simple, soft cup training bra, and the other was a more structured underwire bra made of pale pink satin with a delicate lace trim. "Let's try this one first," she said, handing me the lacy one. She led me to a private fitting room. I stared at the contraption in my hands. It felt impossibly complex, with its straps and hooks and sculpted cups. I wanted to throw it on the floor and run, but the attendant was waiting patiently outside. With trembling fingers, I slipped my arms through the straps and tried to pull it around me. I fumbled with the hooks on the back, unable to make them connect. A gentle knock. "Need a hand, honey?" the attendant asked. Mutely, I opened the door. I turned my back to her, my cheeks on fire. Her fingers were quick and efficient. She fastened the tiny hooks, then reached around and adjusted the straps on my shoulders. "There you go," she said. "Now, look in the mirror." I turned around slowly and faced my reflection. The bra fit perfectly. It lifted and supported my new breasts, creating a smooth, rounded silhouette under my uniform blouse. The feeling was bizarre. There was the slight pressure of the underwire against my ribs, the gentle pull of the straps on my shoulders, and the soft, almost ticklish sensation of the lace against my skin. It felt wrong. It felt like a costume. But as I stared at the girl in the mirror, a traitorous thought slipped through the cracks in my despair. The bra, it made my figure look nice. The shape it gave me was undeniably feminine and, in an objective, terrifying way, pretty. I quickly looked away, disgusted with myself. The disgust was mixed with a new, unsettling emotion, a flicker of morbid curiosity. I was horrified by the girl in the mirror, but I couldn't stop looking at her. I was beginning to see her not as a monstrous stranger, but as me, Stephanie, and that scared me more than anything. Life at GRS settled into a strange, surreal routine. Each day was a meticulous deconstruction of my old self and the forced assembly of a new one. We learned how to walk, how to sit, how to talk. Our old masculine strides were corrected into smaller, more graceful steps. We were taught to sit with our knees together, to cross our legs at the ankle, never the knee. Every natural impulse I had was now wrong. The most challenging class was poise and presentation, which was a nice way of saying how to walk in high heels. The instructor, a stern former ballerina named Miss Dubois, had us line up in front of a mirrored wall. We were each given a pair of simple black pumps with a modest 2-inch heel. The moment I slipped my feet into them, I felt like I was on stilts. My weight was thrown forward onto the balls of my feet, my ankles wobbling precariously.
Posture, ladies, Miss Dubois called out, tapping a long wooden pointer on the floor, the stomach in, shoulders back, head up. Imagine a string pulling you up from the crown of your head.
I tried to walk. My first step was a clumsy, lurching motion. I nearly twisted my ankle. Around me, other girls were stumbling and giggling nervously. It was a room full of former boys, all of us trying to master this bizarre, unnatural form of locomotion. It was in this class that I finally started talking to my roommate. She had arrived a few days after my own transformation. Her name was Tamara, and before GRS, she had been a lanky basketball player named Todd. She had the same haunted, angry look in her eyes that I felt in my own. "I feel like a baby deer," she muttered to me, clinging to the ballet bar for support. Her long legs looked especially awkward in the heels. "Tell me about it," I grumbled back, my calves already starting to ache. I used to be able to run a 4-minute mile. Now I can't even walk across a room without looking like I'm drunk. We found a grim solidarity in our shared misery. We complained together about the food, the curfew, and the endless lessons on applying makeup. Learning to use an eyelash curler was a special kind of terror. More than once, I nearly took my own eye out. Not everyone was as resistant as we were. There was another girl on our hall, Beth, who used to be a quiet kid named Billy. Unlike Tamara and me, Beth seemed to embrace the change. She picked up the makeup tutorials instantly, her eyeliner always perfect. She mastered the walk and heels in a single afternoon and even seemed to enjoy it. "Isn't it amazing?" she said to me one day, twirling in front of the mirror in her uniform skirt. "I never felt right before, but this feels like who I was always supposed to be." I just stared at her, unable to comprehend her attitude. Her acceptance felt like a betrayal of everything we had lost. Tamara and I would roll our eyes at her, but secretly, I think a part of me envied her ease. She wasn't fighting a war inside her own head every second of the day. The school often brought in former students to act as mentors. One of them was a girl named Erin. She was stunning, tall, confident, with fiery red hair and a smile that could disarm a battalion. She had gone through her own transformation at GRS 2 years prior. Now, she was a model of perfect, effortless femininity. She moved with a liquid grace. Her voice was a melodic alto, and she captivated every room she entered.
Erin became my obsession. I watched her with a mixture of intense jealousy and a strange, budding aspiration. She was everything I was not: confident, beautiful, and seemingly at peace with her new life. She represented a future that felt both impossible and, to a small, secret part of me, deeply desirable. I hated myself for it. I was supposed to be mourning Jack, not fantasizing about becoming a better version of Stephanie.
A few months into our stay, the school held a small formal dance. It was meant to be a chance for us to practice our new social skills. The girls from our wing were paired with boys from a nearby private academy who were, I assumed, paid handsomely for their time or earning some kind of community service credit. The idea of dancing with a boy was mortifying. We spent the entire day getting ready. We were taken to the school's wardrobe, a massive room filled with donated formal dresses. I numbly picked out a simple, dark blue silk dress that fell just to my knees. It was sleeveless and had a modest neckline. Back in my room, Tamara, Beth, and I helped each other with hair and makeup. Beth was an artist with an eyeshadow palette, and despite my protests, she insisted on giving me a smoky eye. "Just trust me," she said, dabbing at my eyelids. "It'll bring out the brown in your eyes." When I finally looked in the mirror, I was shocked. The dress clung to my body, the cool silk a constant, whispering reminder of the curves beneath it. The dark blue made my skin look pale and smooth. My long hair was swept up in a simple twist, and the makeup, as much as I hated to admit it, made my eyes look bigger and deeper. A light spritz of a floral perfume, borrowed from Beth, enveloped me in a scent that was sweet and utterly feminine. I didn't look like a boy in a dress. I looked like a girl, a pretty girl. The gymnasium had been decorated with twinkling lights and streamers. The boys from the academy stood awkwardly on one side of the room. They looked as nervous as we felt. A slow song started to play.
A boy with sandy blonde hair and a nervous smile approached me. "Hi," he said. "I'm Lucas. Would you like to dance?"
My heart hammered against my ribs. I wanted to say no, to run and hide. But Ms. Albright was watching from the sidelines with an expectant look. "Okay," I whispered. He led me to the dance floor and gently took my hand. Placing his other hand on the small of my back, his touch sent a jolt, a strange electric spark through my entire body. It was nothing like when I held Sue. This was different. I was on the receiving end of the touch, the one being led. We swayed awkwardly to the music. "You look beautiful," he murmured, his voice close to my ear. A hot blush spread across my cheeks. No one had ever called me beautiful before. Compliments for Jack were always about being fast, strong, tough. This was new, unsettling, and, to my absolute horror, a little bit thrilling.
My mind was a battlefield. This is wrong. You're Jack. You should be leading a girl, not being held by some preppy kid named Lucas.
But my body wasn't listening. It was responding on some primal, instinctual level. The warmth of his hand on my back, the light, masculine scent of his cologne, the way he looked down at me. It was all triggering a reaction I couldn't control. A fluttery, nervous excitement was blooming in my chest. When the song ended, he didn't let go right away. He smiled at me. "I hope I get to see you again. Stephanie?" I just nodded, unable to speak, and quickly retreated to the corner where Tamara was hiding. "That looked painful," she said, handing me a cup of punch.
"It was," I lied, my heart still racing.
I spent the rest of the night thinking about that dance, about the feel of Lucas's hand, the warmth of his compliment, the blush on my cheeks. For the first time, I had experienced an interaction not as Jack, the boy, but as Stephanie, the girl. And it hadn't just been a performance. Some part of me had genuinely responded. The fear that had been my constant companion shifted. It was no longer just the fear of having lost my old life. A new fear was emerging, the fear that I might, one day, stop missing it, that the ghost of Jack Lynn would fade away completely, leaving only this new girl, Stephanie, in his place. And I wasn't sure if that was a tragedy or, even more terrifyingly, a relief. The dance was a turning point. Before, my life at GRS had been a performance, a role I was being forced to play. But the interaction with Lucas had planted a seed of something new. It was the first time I had been seen and treated purely as a girl by someone outside this strange institution, and my body's involuntary, positive response to it was something I couldn't ignore. My resistance began to soften, not out of acceptance, but out of sheer emotional exhaustion. Fighting my own reflection every single day was draining. The curriculum, which had once felt like a series of torturous punishments, started to feel less offensive. In makeup class, instead of just smudging eyeliner in angry protest, I started paying attention. I learned the difference between foundation and concealer. I learned how to blend eyeshadow and that a little bit of blush could make my face look less pale and tired. I still felt like a fraud, painting a face that wasn't mine. But the face in the mirror was undeniably more pleasant to look at with a little color. It was a small, vain comfort, but it was something. The high heels, my former instruments of torture, became manageable. I learned to balance, to shift my weight, to walk with a fluid motion that didn't make me look like I was about to fall over. I discovered that heels changed everything about how I carried myself. They forced me to stand up straight, to engage my core, to move with a deliberation I'd never needed as an athlete. It was a different kind of physical discipline. And the runner in me, long dormant, responded to the challenge. One afternoon, I caught my reflection in the mirrored wall of the dance studio. I was walking, my hips swaying slightly in a natural rhythm, my posture straight and confident. For a fleeting second, I didn't see Jack's ghost or a clumsy imposter. I just saw a girl walking.
My relationship with Tamara and Beth shifted. Tamara's anger never subsided. She clung to her past as Todd with a fierce, desperate grip, and she started to see my quiet compliance as a betrayal.
"You're actually starting to like this, aren't you?" she accused me one evening, watching me struggle to brush out the tangles in my long hair. "No," I said defensively. "I'm just tired of fighting." "It's more than that," she scoffed. "You're getting good at it. You're turning into one of them." Her words stung, mostly because they held a sliver of truth I wasn't ready to confront. We started to drift apart, her bitterness forming a wall between us. Conversely, I grew closer to Beth. I began to ask her for help how to braid my hair, which shade of lipstick didn't look garish, how to deal with the monthly curse that was now a new and unwelcome part of my reality. Beth was always patient, always kind. She never judged my clumsiness or my moments of despair. "It takes time," she'd say, her voice soft. "You're grieving. It's like a death. You know Jack died, but you, Stephanie, you were just born. You have to learn everything from scratch." Her perspective was simple, but it resonated. Maybe she was right. Maybe I couldn't spend the rest of my life mourning a ghost. My graduation from GRS was approaching. It wasn't a ceremony with a cap and gown, but a quiet discharge. We were given new legal documents, a new birth certificate, a new social security card, a new driver's license with a photo that made my stomach clench. The face was mine, but the name underneath it was Stephanie Lind. Ms. Albright met with me for a final evaluation. She looked through a folder filled with reports from my various instructors. "Your poise has improved remarkably, Stephanie," she said, offering a rare, genuine smile. "Your grades are excellent. We believe you are ready to face the world." Face the world. The thought was paralyzing. Here, in the cloistered, artificial environment of GRS, I was just one of many. Out there, I would be a girl with a secret, a past that I could never explain. "What am I supposed to do?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Go back to a normal high school. Go to college. What am I supposed to tell people?" "You tell them whatever you're comfortable with," she said gently. "You can say you were ill and homeschooled for a year, or you can simply start fresh. Stephanie Lind is who you are now. Her past is a blank page. You get to write it." A blank page. It sounded less like a freedom and more like an erasure. On the last day, my parents came to pick me up. I hadn't seen them in 6 months. I waited in the foyer, wearing not my uniform, but a simple pair of women's jeans, which fit my new hips perfectly, and a soft green sweater. My hair was tied back in a simple ponytail. I felt a nervous tremor in my hands. My dad saw me first. He stopped in the doorway, his face a complicated mask of emotions. He had lost a son. He was looking at a daughter he didn't know. He gave me a stiff, awkward hug, his arms barely touching me. It broke my heart. My mom, however, rushed forward and wrapped me in her arms, holding me tightly. She was crying. "Oh, sweetheart," she whispered into my hair. "Look at you. You're so beautiful." The word beautiful from her, my own mother, sent a fresh wave of confusion through me. I didn't feel beautiful. I felt like a lie. The drive home was quiet. I watched the familiar scenery pass by, feeling like a tourist in my own life. We passed Northgate High, and I saw the track team out for practice, a group of boys running laps in the afternoon sun. A sharp, painful pang of longing hit me so hard it knocked the wind out of me. That used to be me. That life was gone forever. My mom must have seen the look on my face. She reached over from the passenger seat and took my hand. Her hand was warm and strong. "I know this is hard," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I know you've lost so much, and I'm so sorry for what happened to you. But I want you to know one thing." She squeezed my hand. "It doesn't matter to me, whether you are Jack or Stephanie, whether you are my son or my daughter. You are my child, and I love you, Nothing will ever change that." Her words sliced through the armor I had built around my heart. A sob escaped my lips, then another. The tears I had been holding back for months finally came. A torrent of grief for Jack, of fear for Stephanie, of gratitude for my mom's unconditional love. I cried for the runner I had been, for the girl I had become, and for the terrifying, unknown future that lay ahead. She called me her daughter, and for the first time, hearing the word didn't feel like an insult or a mistake. It felt like a lifeline. It was a single, solid point of acceptance in a world that had been turned completely upside down. It wasn't a solution, and it didn't magically fix everything. But it was a start. It was permission to stop fighting a battle I had already lost and to start figuring out how to survive the peace. We pulled into the driveway of my childhood home. The basketball hoop above the garage, rusted and leaning, was a monument to a boy who no longer existed. The lawn I used to mow, the front porch I used to sit on with Sue, every detail was a ghost. Walking through the front door was the hardest part. The house smelled the same of my mom's lemon cleaner and my dad's coffee. But I was the variable that had changed. I felt like an intruder. My old room was the final trial. My parents had tried to be thoughtful. My posters of famous runners and baseball players were gone. The walls had been repainted a neutral cream color. My old single bed was still there, but it was covered with a new floral comforter. On the desk where my running trophies used to gleam, there were a few new novels and a small vanity mirror. They had erased Jack. I understood why they did it. They thought it would be less painful, but it felt like a desecration of a tomb. This wasn't my room anymore. It was a guest room, prepared for a stranger named Stephanie. I spent the first few days at home in a self-imposed quarantine, mostly staying in that room. My parents tried to coax me out, but the world outside my door felt too large, too full of memories. I could hear the neighborhood kids playing street hockey outside, their shouts and the clatter of their sticks a painful echo of my own past. One afternoon, I was staring blankly at the wall when I heard a soft knock. It was my mom. "There's someone here to see you, honey," she said, her voice hesitant. "It's Sue." My blood ran cold. Sue, I hadn't spoken to her since before I left for GRS. My parents had told her I was away at a special school for a rare medical condition, leaving the details vague. I had imagined this moment 1,000 times, each scenario more disastrous than the last. "I can't," I whispered, my voice trembling. "Mom, please, I can't see her." "Stephanie," my mom said, using my new name with a deliberate gentleness, "you can't hide forever. She's been worried sick about you. She deserves an explanation." She was right. I owed Sue that much. Swallowing the lump of panic in my throat, I nodded. "Okay, give me a minute." After my mom left, I scrambled to the closet. What was I supposed to wear? The jeans and sweater felt too casual, too normal. I felt anything but normal. My hands shook as I pulled out the simple blue dress from the GRS dance. It was the only armor I had. I slipped it on, the silk cool against my skin. I ran a brush through my long hair, my hands clumsy. I looked in the new vanity mirror on my desk. The girl staring back was pale, her eyes wide with terror. I looked like a scared kid playing dress-up. Taking a deep breath, I walked out of my room and down the stairs. Sue was standing in the living room looking anxiously toward the staircase. When she saw me, she froze. Her mouth fell open slightly, her pretty blue eyes widening in utter disbelief. She scanned me from head to toe, from my long hair down to my bare feet on the hardwood floor. Her brain was clearly struggling to reconcile the person she was seeing with the boy she knew. "Jack," she whispered, the name a fragile question in the silent room. The sound of my old name from her lips was like a punch to the gut. "Hi, Sue," I managed to say, my voice coming out soft and high. She took a hesitant step forward. What happened to you, your hair, your voice?" Her eyes drifted down to the front of my dress, to the undeniable curves beneath it, and her confusion curdled into shock. "Oh my God!" My mom, who had been hovering in the kitchen doorway, quietly slipped away, giving us privacy. "My parents told you I had a medical condition," I began, my voice shaking. It's a rare genetic thing. It changed me.
Changed you, she repeated, her voice incredulous. Jack, you're a girl.
I couldn't meet her eyes. I just stared at the floor, my arms wrapped around myself. My name is Stephanie now. We stood there in a heavy, suffocating silence for what felt like an eternity. I could feel her staring at me, trying to find a trace of the boy she loved in this new female form. But how she finally asked, Is it permanent? Yeah, I said, the word tasting like ash. It's permanent. She sank onto the sofa, her face pale. She ran a hand through her blonde hair, looking utterly lost. I felt a surge of guilt so powerful it was nauseating. I had done this to her. My freakish body had destroyed not only my own life, but hers as well. So all of it, the running, college, us, she trailed off, her voice breaking. It's gone, I whispered. I'm sorry, Sue. I'm so sorry. She started to cry. Soft, heartbroken sobs. I wanted to go to her, to comfort her, but I was frozen in place. How could I? The person she wanted comfort from didn't exist anymore. If I touched her now, with these soft, slender hands, in this girl's body, it would only make things worse. After a few minutes, she wiped her eyes and stood up. She looked at me one last time, her gaze filled with a turmoil of pity, confusion, and a grief that mirrored my own. I have to go, she said. Her voice unsteady, she walked to the door without looking back. Goodbye, Jack. She used my old name. It was her final, heartbreaking refusal to accept the girl standing in front of her. The door clicked shut, and I was alone. I sank to my knees right there in the living room and finally let myself feel the full weight of what I had lost. It wasn't just my body, my future. It was my past, too. My shared history with Sue, the identity of Jack and Sue, was gone. She was grieving her boyfriend, and I was grieving my entire existence. Later that evening, I went back to my room. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at my reflection in the vanity mirror. The face was tear-stained, the eyes red and swollen, but it was undeniably the face of a girl, a sad, lost girl. My mom had told me that she loved her child, whether it was Jack or Stephanie. Sue had said goodbye to Jack, unable to see past the change, and Beth's words from GRS echoed in my mind. Jack died, but you, Stephanie, you were just born. Maybe they were all right. Maybe holding on to Jack was just prolonging the agony. He was a memory, a ghost. He couldn't comfort Sue. He couldn't run on the track. He couldn't come back. The person who existed now, the one sitting in this room, was Stephanie. I reached out a trembling hand and touched the cool surface of the mirror, my fingertips resting on the cheek of my own reflection. For the first time, I didn't flinch away in disgust. I just looked. I saw the brown eyes, the soft curve of the lips, the waves of chestnut hair. Hello, Stephanie, I whispered, the words quiet and fragile in the still room. It wasn't a moment of triumph. It wasn't a happy acceptance. It was a surrender, a quiet, heartbreaking acknowledgement of reality. I was letting go of the ghost. I was alone. I was terrified. And I had no idea who this Stephanie person was, or what she was supposed to do. But she was the one who had to get up in the morning. She was the one who had to figure out how to live. My life as Jack Lind was over. My life as Stephanie Lind was just beginning. The weeks following Sue's visit were a hollow-limbed existence. I drifted through the house like a ghost, the conversation with her replaying in my mind. Her final goodbye, Jack, was a definitive end, a slamming door on my past. I understood. Of course, I couldn't expect her to magically transfer her feelings for the boy I was onto the girl I had become, but understanding didn't make it hurt any less. My mom was my anchor. She didn't push me, but she created a gentle, persistent current of normalcy. She'd bring me tea, sit with me while I blankly watched TV, and talk about simple things: the garden, a book she was reading, a funny story about our neighbor's dog. She started calling me Steph, a casual, affectionate nickname that felt less jarring than the formal Stephanie. It was a small thing, but it felt like she was getting to know me, the person here and now, not just the daughter who had replaced her son. One Saturday morning, she came into my room with 2 mugs of coffee. "I'm going to the mall to pick up a few things," she said, setting a mug on my nightstand. I was thinking you could come with me." My immediate instinct was to say no. The mall with its crowds of people, its fluorescent lights, its judging eyes. It sounded like a nightmare. I hadn't been out in public, other than the car ride home, since the transformation. "I don't think I'm ready," I said, pulling the floral comforter up to my chin. "You don't have to be ready," she replied gently. "You just have to do it. We'll just be an hour. We can go to the bookstore. Get a pretzel. No pressure." She gave me a look that was both pleading and firm. "Steph, you can't stay in this room forever." She was right. I was 17, and I was living like a hermit. With a deep, shuddering sigh, I agreed. Getting ready was an ordeal. What does a person wear to the mall? A person like me, I rifled through the small collection of new clothes my mom had bought for me. Most of it was still in shopping bags, untouched. I settled on the safest option, the women's jeans I'd worn home from GRS, a plain gray t-shirt, and a zip-up hoodie for shoes. I chose a simple pair of flat sneakers, a concession to the runner I used to be. The thought of wearing heels in public was laughable. I spent 20 minutes in front of the mirror, trying to do something with my hair, finally just pulling it back into a low ponytail. I stared at my reflection, my heart pounding. Did I look like a normal girl, or did I look like a boy in disguise? My shoulders still felt too broad, my hands too big. The hoodie helped hide my figure, but I felt incredibly exposed. Every feature seemed like a clue to my past, a breadcrumb leading back to Jack. The drive to the mall was tense. I kept my head down, watching the scenery blur past, my stomach churning with anxiety. The moment we stepped through the automatic doors, a wall of noise, light, and people hit me. It was overwhelming. Shoppers bustled past, their conversations a meaningless hum. Teenagers laughed in loud, confident groups. I instinctively pulled my hoodie up, trying to disappear. My mom put a reassuring hand on my arm.
"Bookstore first," she said, steering me through the crowd.
Inside the quiet sanctuary of the bookstore, I felt myself relax a fraction. I wandered through the aisles, running my fingers over the spines of books. It felt almost normal. I was browsing the young adult section when I saw them, a group of kids from Northgate High. I recognized a couple of them from my old English class. Panic seized me. I ducked behind a tall bookshelf, my heart hammering against my ribs. I held my breath, praying they wouldn't see me. I could hear their voices, laughing about a teacher, planning to see a movie. It was a snapshot of the life I was supposed to have. After a few agonizing minutes, they had moved on and left the store. I leaned against the shelf, my legs feeling weak. My mom found me there, her face etched with concern. "Are you okay?" I just shook my head, unable to speak. "Okay," she said, her voice firm but kind. "Let's go home." The retreat felt like a failure. Back in the car, I stared out the window, tears of frustration stinging my eyes. "I can't do this," I whispered. "I can't live like this, always hiding, always afraid someone will recognize me." "It won't always be like this," my mom said. "It's still new. You're still healing." "Healing," I said, the word coming out sharper than I intended. "How do you heal from this? It's not a broken leg, Mom. It's everything." She was quiet for a long moment as she drove. "I know," she finally said, "and maybe healing is the wrong word. Maybe it's more like learning. You're learning a whole new way to be in the world. It's okay if you fall down. I'll be here to help you get back up." Her words didn't magically solve anything, but they chipped away at my sense of isolation. I wasn't going through this completely alone. The next few weeks, we tried again, short trips, to the grocery store, to the post office, to a quiet park for a walk. Each outing was a small battle against my own anxiety. I learned to keep my gaze down, to avoid eye contact. I was hyper-aware of every glance in my direction, convinced that everyone could see my secret. One afternoon, while waiting in line at a coffee shop, an older woman smiled at me. "I love your hair, dear," she said. "Such a beautiful color." I was so startled I could only stammer, "Oh, thanks." But as we walked out with our drinks, her casual, kind words echoed in my head. She hadn't seen a freak. She hadn't seen a boy in disguise. She had just seen a girl with nice hair. It was the first time a stranger had interacted with me as Stephanie, and it hadn't been a disaster. It was a tiny, fragile crack of light in my dark world. The biggest test came a month later. My parents announced we were moving. My dad had gotten a job transfer to a city 3 states away. "It's a chance for a fresh start, Steph," my dad said, looking at me directly. It was one of the first times he'd seemed truly engaged since the change. "No one there will know you. No one will know about before. You can just be Stephanie." A fresh start. The idea was both terrifying and intoxicating. To leave behind the ghosts of Northgate High, the memory of Sue, the pitying looks of our neighbors. It was an incredible gift, but it also meant leaving behind everything familiar, the last tethers to my old life. It was the right decision, though I knew it. Hiding in my room in a town that would always remember Jack Lind wasn't a life. Before we left, I did one last thing. One evening after dark, I put on my running shoes, my new smaller running shoes, and my hoodie, and I walked to the Northgate High track. The gates were locked, but I knew a spot where the fence was loose. I slipped through and walked onto the field. The track was illuminated by the faint glow of the security lights. It was empty and silent. I stood at the starting line, the familiar painted white stripe on the red synthetic surface. I closed my eyes and could almost hear it, the starter pistol, the roar of the crowd, the pounding of my own feet. I took a deep breath of the cool night air. I wasn't here to mourn. I was here to say goodbye.
I looked at the record board on the wall of the stadium. Under men's 1 mile, it still read J. Lind 3:59.8.
A part of me would always be that boy, the 4-minute man, his victory, his strength, his dreams. They were a part of my story, but they weren't the whole story anymore. I reached up and pulled down the hood of my sweatshirt, letting my long hair fall free. I took one last look at the track, the arena of my former glory, and then I turned and walked away without looking back. It was time to start a new race.
Part 8. Hello, World. The new house was in a quiet suburban neighborhood with streets lined by maple trees. It smelled of fresh paint and possibility. My new room had a big window that looked out over a green, leafy backyard. There were no ghosts here, no memories. It was a blank slate.
We moved in August, just a few weeks before the start of the new school year. The thought of walking into a new high school, Eastbrook High, sent waves of terror through me. But it was a different kind of fear now. It wasn't the fear of being recognized, it was the fear of the unknown. My mom took me shopping for school clothes. This time, it was different from our first disastrous trip to the mall. I was still nervous, but I had a purpose. I had to build a wardrobe for Stephanie Lind, a girl who was about to start her junior year of high school. I found myself hesitating in the middle of a department store, completely lost. I had no idea what my style was. What did Stephanie like? Did she like bright colors or muted tones, dresses or jeans? I had spent 17 years as a boy whose entire wardrobe consisted of athletic shorts, t-shirts, and jeans. Fashion had never been on my radar. Sensing my paralysis, my mom led me over to a rack of simple, stylish basics. "Let's start here," she said. "Just pick things you think are comfortable." I started slowly, tentatively, a few pairs of well-fitting jeans in different washes, some soft, simple t-shirts and sweaters, a comfortable-looking floral sundress. As I held the clothes, I tried to imagine myself wearing them, walking down the halls of Eastbrook High. I wasn't just putting on a costume anymore, I was building an identity. In the dressing room, I tried on a pair of dark-wash skinny jeans and a simple burgundy sweater. I looked in the mirror. The clothes fit my body, my new female body, in a way that was flattering and felt right for the first time. I looked at my reflection and didn't feel a pang of loss for the boy I used to be. I just saw a teenage girl, nervous about the first day of school. I saw Stephanie. The first day at Eastbrook was the most terrifying day of my new life. I walked through the crowded halls, my backpack clutched in my hands like a shield. Everyone was a stranger. No one knew me. I was just the new girl. In my first period English class, the teacher, a friendly woman named Mrs. Davison, did a roll call. "Stephanie Lind." "Here," I said, my voice a little shaky. A few heads turned to look at the new face, but their gazes were just curious, not suspicious. A girl with bright curly red hair and a spray of freckles across her nose turned around in her seat and gave me a warm smile. "Hi," she whispered. "I'm Maya. I like your sweater." "Thanks," I whispered back, a real genuine smile touching my lips for what felt like the first time in an eternity. "I'm Stephanie." Throughout the day, I had a few more small, positive interactions. A boy held a door open for me. A girl in the lunch line asked me where I was from. They were tiny, mundane moments, but to me, they were monumental. They were proof that I could exist in this world as Stephanie. I could be seen as a girl, and the world wouldn't end. Of course, it wasn't easy. I still had moments of profound awkwardness and dysphoria. In gym class, I felt clumsy and weak, a shadow of the athlete I once was. I felt a surge of panic every time I had to use the women's restroom, and I still avoided mirrors in public, afraid of what I might see or what I might fail to see. But there were also unexpected moments of grace. One afternoon, Maya invited me to study with her and a few of her friends at a coffee shop. We sat for hours, quizzing each other on American history and complaining about our math homework. They talked about boys, about music, about their weekend plans. They included me in their conversation, asked my opinions, and laughed at my jokes. I sat there, sipping a latte, and for a while, I forgot to be anxious. I forgot to monitor my voice and my posture. I was just a girl, hanging out with her friends. It felt more normal than anything had in the past year. As we were packing up to leave, a guy from our history class, a tall, quiet boy named Ben, came over to our table. "Hey, Stephanie," he said, a shy smile on his face. He was holding a copy of a book I had mentioned I wanted to read. "I finished this. I thought, maybe you'd like to borrow it." My heart gave a little flutter, a familiar echo of the feeling I'd had when Lucas asked me to dance, but this time it was less terrifying and more warm. "Yeah," I said, my cheeks flushing slightly. "Thanks, Ben, I'd love to." He handed me the book, our fingers brushing for a brief moment. It was a simple, friendly gesture, but it felt significant. It was another small step forward. That night, back in my new room, I sat by the window, Ben's book in my lap. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. I could hear the distant sound of a high school football game, the faint roar of the crowd rising and falling on the evening air. A year ago, I would have been on a field like that, under the Friday night lights, the center of my own world. That world was gone. The boy who lived in it was gone. And I still mourned him. I think a part of me always will. But as I looked out the window, at this new sky in this new town, I didn't just feel the weight of what I had lost. I felt the tentative, fragile hope of what I might find. Life wasn't simple anymore. It wasn't just the track, the burn, and the roar. It was complicated and confusing, and often painful, but it was also filled with new possibilities, the kindness of a new friend, the warmth of a shy boy's smile, the quiet promise of a blank page. I opened the book and began to read. My name is Stephanie Lind, and this is the first chapter of my story.